How much is Broncos country freaking out over the loss to the Lions? How much is Sean Payton freaking out over the loss to the Lions? Enough to make drastic changes? We're going to break it down on the DNVR Broncos podcast today with a different crew, and I love it. We got Henry Chisholm, Alexis Perry, Zach Stevens rolling with you. How are you doing today?
Good. I was just thinking about probably the overreaction from the Lions loss, given the fact that it was something that we all had circled as a loss on the schedule all season.
Yep.
And for some reason, when the team actually lost, we're all shocked.
It was those 42 points that sting.
Yeah, that's the
because
stinger.
it's really easy to think like this is going to be a loss and just kind of expect it to be a loss.
Yeah, but you want to lose by like 3.
Exactly. But then you watch them lose and you're like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like it sucks when they lose, and so then it's just tough to you can't compartmentalize as well as you think you can.
Self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah.
That's why
also
it's
true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
You know what's crazy is they got blown out. There's no easy way to put that. It's not like it was a close game and the Lions pulled away at the end. It was probably worse than actually the 42-17 was. And they lost by 25 points.
Yeah.
How did they lose to a team by double that earlier this season?
Yeah.
50 points, that is just
They missed
wild.
twice as many tackles.
Wow.
That's what happened.
And
Wow.
you know what
That is
they
what it is.
did after that game, shortly after that game? They made some pretty drastic changes, specifically on the defensive side. Maybe not drastic changes. Were the changes that they made after that Dolphins game on defense to kind of flip their defense, would you say they were drastic?
They were pretty. See, I thought you were talking about changes after the Lions game, and I was like, wait.
You're like, did I
They
miss
made
something?
these must have been tiny changes if I don't know what they are. But yeah,
You're sleeping the
Are you
last
talking about the
72
release
hours.
of Randy Gregory
Yeah.
or
Yep.
trade, I guess it ended up being?
Yep.
Yep.
Randy and Frank, I think those are pretty drastic. I mean,
Yep.
those are your two top edge rushers.
And then what? You had Jaquan
Yep.
come in instead of your guy saying Bassey. We got to tell Alexis about that.
We do have to
after
tell
the
Alexis
show.
about that.
Did he DM you? What happened? Did you get a DM?
We'll talk after.
Oh, I love a DM.
Yeah, we love DMs.
What else was there? Were those the big ones?
Yeah, I mean,
guess less of Drew Sanders.
yeah, but he was
for-
only in for injury. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Justin came back from injury.
Right. So, I mean, overall, the defense had drastic changes after that game, but it wasn't necessary. And I guess Randy Gregory, that is a
That's
drastic
a pretty
change.
big one, yeah.
Your second highest paid defensive player?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty drastic.
That's pretty drastic just to ship him off.
I think what they did is they just decided that it didn't matter. Exactly what we knew about Sean Payton heading into the season is it doesn't matter what your contract is, how much you get paid. The best guys at that position are going to be on the field.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they just need to continue to do moving forward on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Who's the second highest paid defensive player right now? Obviously, Justin's one.
It'd be
Zach
Allen.
Allen?
Zach
Yeah,
Allen,
because he's
yeah.
in front of DJ.
So do they need to just trade him right now?
No.
I guess you couldn't
Well,
trade him.
that's
Cut
the
him?
thing. No.
Bench him?
I think that the problem is you don't have enough Zach Allens. Not that he had his best game on Saturday, but, I don't think Matt Henningsen is the answer. No offense to Matt, who's like a good rotational guy, but
Zach Allen's having a career year.
Yeah.
He has more quarterback pressures
Yeah.
than like anyone in
Yeah.
the league by like a lot.
yeah.
And then also he's doing that in the running game too. I think
Yeah.
for defensive lineman, he's in the top 5 for run stops too. So he's doing that on the pass game, like you said,
Yeah.
and the run game.
Yeah, we need 22 Zach Allens. Is what we
22
need.
Zach Allens.
Janet
Why
could
not?
kind of fill
Why
that
not?
role.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not?
Wow.
So-
that is another good offseason conversation you have to get back to.
Yeah.
22 of one player. I think we decided
who'd that
before
be?
it was just
Like that.
Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah, would have to be.
I
Baron
don't know.
Brownings, maybe.
Pat can't-
Cortland
Ooh.
Sutton.
Pat can't block.
Yeah, that is an interesting
Can he
conversation.
hit?
I like that.
So Justin came back from injury after that
Yes.
Dolphins game. Kareem is now coming back from suspension. But PJ Locke, as we've talked about yesterday, PJ Locke is the first Broncos safety in history to have back-to-back-to-back sacks. So what do you do? Is it PJ Locke who gets to start this week? Is it Kareem Jackson? Or it is a safety position where it's not like a quarterback where it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Or do you mix them in, and how do you balance that? Because I don't think you're going to be advocating for taking Justin Simmons off the field.
Absolutely not. I feel like there is a way where we can get the best of both worlds between Kareem Jackson and PJ Locke. The thing is like PJ Locke has been a dog since Kareem Jackson has been out. He's forcing turnovers. He's getting after the quarterback. I mean, prior to that, Kareem Jackson, he had 2 forced fumbles earlier this season. So he's doing things too. It's just, is it time to turn the page? Like, this is the next generation of Broncos safeties, and I love seeing PJ Locke on the field. Does he make mistakes? Sure. But I think he helps this defense more than he hurts them. And as of late, big Kareem Jackson fan, obviously, but as of late, unfortunately, K-Jack has hurt this team more than he's helped them.
Yeah, it's tough because PJ's made a bunch of plays. In coverage, though, I'm still not so. I mean, he was doing fine. Like, he was getting away with things. Let's see, what game was it? I think it was the Houston game. There were a couple receivers who were just open in the back, like got behind him. Yep, who got behind him, but like they missed the throw or missed the catch. Same thing happened in the Chiefs game. So I think that he dodged like a bunch of bullets.
Pat kind of told us yesterday that
exactly.
He's gotten a little lucky.
Yeah, he's gotten a little lucky. And then last week the luck kind of dried up, and he gave up the 2 touchdown passes and got beat a couple other times. And we talked on Monday, I think it was Monday, about there was the one where it's like, you got beat on an out against a slot receiver, which isn't that big of a deal. Like, you give up 10 yards, any safety's probably going to do that, but then you don't make the tackle, it's another 9 yards. And that's the kind of stuff that was happening. So to me, it's Kareem. Like, I get the case for either side of it, but it reminds me a lot of like Fabian Moreau, who like came in and started. He was another one of those changes after the Dolphins game who we forgot about. And it was really, really good for like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
But then after that, like, the dam just kind of broke. And he's letting receivers buy him like once or twice a week now for big gains, and that might even be another thing you got to figure out. But
last week Jared Goff went after him.
Exactly. And so it's tough though because PJ's made so many plays. Like, you set him on those blitzes, you get in the backfield. Like, you can't argue with that production. But I do think just in coverage, I get that people don't love Kareem back there either, but I think he kind of gets a worse rap than he deserves. I go Kareem still.
Yeah, and Kareem might be just the guy that Vance trusts more in those situations. And I'll just take the middle ground of saying
a little bit
Vance
of blend.
Yeah, exactly. A blend, because you can't take PJ's playmaking ability completely off the field. But I think that Vance is going to, when push comes to shove in situations where it is an obvious pass situation, he's going to trust Kareem more. But what you could do in order to get both of them on the field is either take a lineman off, but more realistically take Alex or Josie off. Do you do that?
I don't think so. I mean, then you're just too light. Because, I mean, I guess you look at it as like, so your nickel is you take your defensive lineman off, you put in Jaquan. So there's your nickel. So normally you'd say, like, if you're trying to get an extra safety on the field, he's your nickel. The other option is to go to dime, and so I'd imagine that one of these two will now be your dime backer instead of Riley Moss, who's been that for like a month and a half now. And so
PJ would be that, right?
I would
With Kareem,
think so, just because
safety.
you can protect him a little bit more there,
right?
And you probably want him closer to the line of scrimmage. That's the thing, is like, we didn't get to see Kareem actually take those blitzes off the edge.
Right.
Yeah.
And just knowing the kind of player he is, it seems like that actually might be something he'd be incredible at, but they just weren't blitzing as much when he was allowed to play. So I do think you probably leave Kareem back, especially because in the run game, you want him running downhill more.
Or do you just keep Kareem away from quarterbacks?
That's the other thing. Do you just not even...
Do you just leave him in coverage? You're like, you know what? Don't
Cover
even.
guy.
Yeah.
Just lock him up. Yeah. And that's the thing. So, I mean, you could, like... The thing is, you'd be cheating into your dime more often than not. And that's how you get both Jaquan and the third safety on the field. But by doing that, you're saying, like, we got 4 linemen, we got 1 linebacker, and this
Better
week
stop
against
the
the
run.
Patriots,
Yeah. it's
you can't do it against the Patriots.
Right.
Like, unless it's 3rd and 12, you can't do it against the Patriots. After that, you've got the
Austin Eckler.
Chargers.
With a backup
Chargers,
quarterback,
maybe you
though.
actually could.
A backup quarterback?
That's
yeah,
true.
Unless they're stupid, which they very much... The Chargers, I mean, might be stupid.
Who gives this defense more of an opportunity to generate takeaways?
PJ. And that's why when
They're
push
6
comes...
and 1
Yeah.
Yeah.
in games where they have at least 2.
And that's why when push comes to shove, if it is deciding between one of these guys, I'm going PJ for that, and because he's the future play. But I think that Vance is just going to go with the guy that he trusts more, and that's probably a veteran. So I think that I would probably take a different route than what I think the Broncos will end up doing.
And Vance, we trust.
Yep.
Whatever.
With the turnaround, yeah, absolutely.
But again, like, it's just so tough because, like, those big plays really help.
Yeah.
But also, when you give up, like, you got beat by Jahmyr Gibbs on, like, the one that comes back in for a touchdown.
Keep in mind, everyone on the defense got beat on that one.
Yeah.
Very
Then
true.
there was, like, the out. Was it now? No, it was like a double move. It was like an in to Sam Laporta. Like, he gave up 2 of those touchdowns last week. And, like, I don't know what a 10-yard touchdown compares to with, like, a sack, but it did feel like even before this he was kind of due for a couple of those, but the offense wasn't quite capitalizing. And I'm like, do you just say, like, it's a defense that takes a lot of chances, so F it, we're just going to go after the quarterback?
Right.
Or do you also need to say, like, we can't have leaks like that. Like, 2 touchdowns in a game when your offense is averaging, like, probably less than 2 touchdowns per game.
Yeah. Well, and when Pat's mentioning the communication issues with PJ, like, how do you fix that?
Yeah.
You have 3 weeks left to fix that. How do
It's
you
tough.
fix it? I'm, like, genuinely concerned.
Yeah,
Like, how does it happen?
And that might be the good news is the next 3 weeks, you can probably make mistakes, and Vance can see which one's better and experiment a little, where as if you were playing the Lions moving forward, you wouldn't have as much opportunity to experiment with. So that's going to be the big question, and we're going to talk to Vance tomorrow and get a little more insight on that. You mentioned another change that we need to talk about. Should Fabian Moreau be benched maybe for Damari Mathis or Riley Moss? But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Factor Meals. Factor Meals is so delicious, and the thing that I'm just amazed about when I get my Factor Meals is how good it is. Not just the flavors, but like the chicken is juicy. The vegetables are like perfectly fresh. And Factor Meals is just the way to go, especially during this busy holiday season or when the new year starts and you want to get your diet back on track. They have so many options over at Factor Meals. It's fresh, never frozen, and I think that's what makes the food so tasty and juicy and delicious. So if you want to get in on Factor Meals, they're going to give you 50% off if you go to factormeals.com/DNVR Bronco 50, no S, Bronco 50, and then use that exact same code DNVR Bronco 50 on their website to get 50% off. We love Factor Meals. We know that you're going to love them too for lunch, dinner, and they also have like smoothies and shakes for breakfast too. So check them out, factormeals.com/DNVR Bronco 50.
And go check out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy platform in North America. It's the easiest, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. So instead of trying to like compete against, like another person who you're kind of paired up against, and so you take like their picks versus your picks, you actually just pick overs and unders for 2 to 6 different players' stats, and then that's all it takes. Like it's pretty simple. So go sign up at prizepicks.com/DNVR. Use the code DNVR for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/DNVR, and use the code DNVR to match up to $100 on your first deposit.
Okay. Yeah?
Yeah. Looks like there's no, nope, we don't have to do the whole DraftKings thing.
Boom, there we
Yep.
go.
Boom.
Okay, so let's hit a couple of these really quick because we still got a lot to get to. First, should the Broncos bench Fabian Moreau for Riley Moss, Damari Mathis? Your choice.
No.
You just, you can't. Like, I feel bad for Damari, and I'd love to see him get another chance. But, like, from the Broncos' perspective, like, we've seen what happened, and Fabian at least gave you, like, 5 weeks of good play and then like 2 to 3 of not so good play.
Right.
Damari just really struggled the entire time. And I do think that it could help him to like jump into a defense that's functioning well. I think that's an easier job than just going out there and trying to like build an identity. I think like plugging him in might be easier. You just can't do it. I would be tempted to see what Riley Moss can do, but
Give me
that's
Riley
just a bad
Moss
idea.
for a week-by-week basis, and if he's not it, again, thankfully, you're playing 3 backup quarterbacks on the season. Then you got Fabian to throw him in. But I agree.
You can't afford
you
week
can't
by
go
week,
back.
though.
Well, yeah. I just...
What if it doesn't work this week
They
and
have
you
to
lose?
win out.
Because Bailey Zappi's just simply not going
Did you see him in
to...
the first half?
Riley Mott, exactly. The
He was
first half.
electric.
Yes, exactly. We're going to dive into Patriots talk a lot tomorrow. But you're not crazy for sticking with Fabian
Yeah.
Moreau.
Yep.
And that is what the Broncos are going to do. They're going to stick with him. Okay, on the other side of the ball, big conversation starting to swirl. Javonte Williams, should he be benched? Not necessarily benched, but should Samaje Perine really take that bigger step and be the Broncos' #1 running back, and Javonte kind of take that #2 spot right now?
I'll start by saying I think they've kind of done a little bit of that already. Like you start with like the Cleveland game, 18 carries, 11, 21, 27, 15. Since then, 10, 2, 11, 12, 13. So like it's dropping off a little bit, and maybe they found a better balance, but I don't know. I've got a lot of thoughts on Javonte. First one is, so his rookie season, 31 broken tackles. It's the most in the NFL that year. And I think he had like 3 in the last 6 weeks or something like that. So it was a lot of it early and then it kind of tapered up, which is kind of what you expect from a rookie. You hit the rookie wall, and that's a thing. Last year, obviously, he gets hurt, so you don't see it. This year, though, he seems to have kind of hit that same wall. He's, according to, this is either the Pro Football Reference stats, the StatHead stats, and they usually do a pretty good job. They have him as missing 1 tackle breaking 1 tackle in the last 6 games. And like the numbers bear that out, even like the normal numbers. I mean, 2.3 yards per carry this week, 3.9 before, 3.5, 3.6, 3.4, 3.8, 3.1, 5.5 before that, which was great, but we're going all the way back to October at that point.
Yeah.
So I do think something is up there, and I almost go to Jaleel.
I was going to say I have a hot take.
As
Yeah.
the starter?
I have
Or
a hot
the main
take.
guy?
Yeah. He has the highest success rate among all Broncos backs this season.
I believe it.
And it's 13% better than Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
It's a little over 53%. He's averaging 5.6 yards a carry. And it sucks because he's only averaging, 4 carries a game? But that's 2 yards more than Samaje and Javonte. So, why don't you lean in to him a little bit more and just see if he can really kickstart the Broncos run game?
I love that idea because then that would force the Broncos to not be tipping their hand when he's on the field, because if he's your #1 guy, well, he's not going to touch the ball every single time he's on the field. And that's kind of the issue with him the past few month, I guess, is when he's on the field, the defense is now keyed in on that. And so they key on, they know exactly where he is, and that's kind of really limited his production. So I would love that. I don't think that's what the Broncos are going to do, though, because I think Sean is going to say that exact thing. Well, if he's on the field, we have to give him the ball because we don't trust him in obvious pass situations. We don't trust him in protection. We don't trust him yet because he's smaller, because he's younger. And Sean trusts Samaje.
For sure.
And so I love that idea. I just don't think that's the way the Broncos are going to go. And, Henry, it is a good point that we've already started to see it. And I think we're just going to continue to see it. And when it comes to Javonte, what do we talk about all offseason? Like, there's no way he's going to be ready for week 1.
Right.
No way. And we just focused on, like, is he going to be ready to start the season?
To just play in the games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then be good initially. But what we didn't think about, and I certainly didn't think about this, was like, okay, he is ready to go at the start of the season, but he wasn't able to do 100% in the offseason to get ready for this season. So I'm not shocked that he's hitting a wall 2 months into going from like 50 to 100 all of a sudden. So I think this isn't just a bad couple of weeks for him. I think he's hitting a very reasonable, understandable wall from that devastating injury he had. So I think that it is time to not totally move on from him, but when you watch the game, the numbers also show that he's hit a ball. But when you watch it, he doesn't seem like Javonte. He's going down with first contact more than I've ever seen in his career right now. So he just lost that kind of extra step.
I just think of that game against Baltimore where he was like literally
Oh my gosh.
carrying the defense,
Exactly.
the whole defense. We haven't really seen a moment like that from him this season. So I think that's just a really clear sign of where he's at. And I think in Broncos country, that's okay. We can be patient with that. And we do have Samaje, we do have Jaleel, and there's other ways that the Broncos can utilize those guys in order to make up for
by
that.
the StatHead stats, there have been 3 games in Javonte's career where he's had 0 yards after contact. One was the Bears game this season when he only carried the ball twice because he got hurt. The other 2 were this week and last week.
Wow.
Yeah, which isn't ideal. And like by Pro Football Focus's count, there was 20 yards after contact last week, but That's the
You
thing
don't
about
even
all
like
the advanced
Pro Football
stats is like
Focus.
exactly.
Don't act
is
like
I
you
don't-
like him today.
Exactly. So I do
ma-
think so. Like the last 5 games, though, it's been 14 carries for Jaleel, like 2.9 a game. Just
Yep.
get that up to like 5.
Yeah.
Maybe like 5.5. Just shift 2 or 3 more over. And just see if you can get them going. And if it works, then you keep building from there.
Man, I'm really okay with, and this is not against Javonte, it's just where the injury, I think, is right now in his rehab. I'm really okay with having Javonte be the number 3 running back. And Samaje really kind of your one, the guy you trust, who can be on all the downs.
Yeah.
Then Jaleel. I love what you said, Alexis. And then Javonte's that maybe he has 4 carries a game moving forward, but he's strong for those 4 carries instead of being worn down.
Yeah.
Okay, any other moves that you think the Broncos should make this week in the final 3 games?
I don't think so. I mean, quarterback is Russ. Don't
Is
need
it?
to go down
Is
that
it?
road. It's
We already
Russ.
had someone
God.
reply on
Oh,
Twitter.
No. Oh, no. Offensive line, you're not touching anything.
Nope.
Tight end, I guess you get
I-
Dulcich back,
Yeah, that could be good.
if that counts as a change.
Do you get Dulcich back? Because we found out from Sean on Monday that Greg Dulcich practiced last week until Friday when he was out because a new injury popped up. We know it's been his hamstring forever. Sean maintained after the game. He said his hamstring's fine. It was his foot
Yep.
that popped up with swelling. We just wanted to get him off his feet, so we didn't want him to play. Is that better or worse that it's now a different thing?
Like I told you guys, I think it was the pregame show on Saturday. I'm over it. Like I'm over
Yeah.
Greg Dulcich until he comes back and I see
Yep.
him consistently for like 4 or 5 games. I'm like not putting a single ounce of emotional
Yep.
energy
fair.
into him. I am putting a lot of energy right now though into the tight end position because I think
Ooh.
Saturday against the Lions and Sam Laporta really highlighted the fact that the Broncos don't have a star at that position. And my friend Doug Ottawell, I love Doug.
Oh, yeah.
I love
Okay.
Doug.
We love Doug.
We
We
do.
love Doug around here. He actually wrote a piece about tight ends, and I thought this was fascinating. And he mentioned that with Seattle, Russell Wilson-led offenses averaged 50 receiving yards per game from the tight end position. In New Orleans, Peyton's offenses had even better production at 56.1. Like Adam Troutman is averaging like 12 yards a game
Yeah.
right now. Like, why isn't Sean drawing plays up for his tight ends? It seems like Lucas Kroll, as much as he wasn't supposed to be in that,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
game-winning situation,
Yep.
it does seem like Sean trusts him a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there a lack of chemistry between Russ and his tight ends? Why isn't he looking towards that position more? I just want to see more action from the tight ends.
I think the tough part is that you start from the point of you just don't have great tight ends, you know, and so that
Could
makes
they be
things
great?
tough. Maybe. so what they've done, I think. So Adam Troutman actually this week played the fewest snaps he's played in a game all season. He's only out there for 30 snaps, and a big reason why is that they've started putting Kroll kind of in the slot. So whenever they have a tight end flexed out, it's basically Kroll.
Okay.
And it's Troutman in line. Whereas before, they kind of let Troutman do both.
Right.
Results, not great. And the guy in the slot, when they flex him out, that was always supposed to be Greg Dulcich. Like every single time, that's supposed to be Greg Dulcich.
Yeah.
Every time there's a tight end in line, it's probably Troutman with occasional man hurts or whatever you want to do there. But without Dulcich, that's kind of been the big receiving hole for the tight ends. And you would hope that he's just going to come back and he can take that role and it'll just make everything pop. But if not, it's probably just more of Lucas Kroll who like did
100%.
some nice things in a couple games, like back to back.
been, like,
He's
what,
done some
4
nice
games?
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he just got officially elevated to the 53-man roster. Sean
Heyo.
not only saying, like, I like what you've been doing, but I want to see even more of it. He was elevated before this last game. And Sean, twice in the past 2 weeks, has unprompted brought up Lucas Kroll when asked about the tight end room. People mentioned Dulcich, Troutman, and I think it was last week, Sean went out of his way to be like, oh, you didn't mention Kroll. Kroll is really doing some good stuff, too.
Right.
So, yeah, I think Kroll is...
Call his number a little bit more.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah.
Lean into it a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder
if we're
if
going to see more and more. Do you think he's just going to get more and more comfortable? I mean, he
And
got
it's-
3 targets this week. Is the first time he's got multiple. Only
And it's
caught one,
those
but
short intermediate passes that Russ is really comfortable with. Who better
Right.
yeah,
than a tight end to
And he's
look
a
to?
big athlete,
I
just
wonder
massive
if-
guy.
Somebody
Little
said that he had
Jordan
center block
Humphrey could
hands,
take
which
that.
Well, he basically he's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Like that's what they use him as is.
And we're seeing him he played a lot at the beginning of the season,
Definitely.
maybe took a dive down a little bit, but now Lil Jordan Humphrey's playing more now too.
Definitely. I mean, and that's the whole Sean Payton offense is you got like your whole spectrum of players where it starts with like you've got like Manhurts and then Adkins, who's like a little bit more of a receiver, to Troutman, who's a little bit more of a receiver, to Kroll, who's just more of a receiver, to Lil Jordan Humphrey, who's a receiver, who's a lot like a tight end, to like Tim Patrick, I guess, would be next, but then it's Cortland. So you just have like this whole spectrum of guys. So it's like Lil Jordan Humphrey, technically a receiver, but they use him to do a bunch of tight end type of things.
Right.
So is Marvin Mims on the complete opposite spectrum of Chris Manhurts?
He is right next to Jaleel.
Okay, yeah.
And then it goes Jaleel, Javonte, Samaje, Burton, Manhurts, and then you're back all the way around. Yeah.
like
I
that.
love a look
Yeah.
inside Henry's brain. It's fun.
Yeah, no, it's the wheel of.
It's the wheel
yeah,
of-
We
Yeah.
literally just went in a circle.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
his
no,
brain.
it really is.
It's fun.
I don't know that I've written that. I thought I might have written that in the.
Well, now you know what you're
Training
doing
camp,
later.
yeah. all runs together,
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. And I also love our friends over at Circa, where we're going to Vegas. It's only like 2 weeks
Who's we?
away. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't think I made the
list.
Confused.
I don't know.
Too. We'll talk about it after, but we, in a general sense, are
Yeah.
going to Vegas this week 18. What is that? The
Oh,
first
geez.
week of January for the Broncos Raiders week 18 game. And if you want to get in, Circa put together a package for you. You can get 20% off a 2-night stay at Circa Resort and Casino, 2 tickets to Winter Swim and Concert, 2 passes to Stadium Swim, DNVR tailgate watch party at Stadium Swim, 1 annual Die Hard membership package, and an option to buy a game ticket. This is going to be a blast, so make sure to check out the link in our description, and then also just if you want a sports book, Circa's the place to go. So check us out and join us for this trip where it's a lot on the line, week 18.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be a blast. So make sure to check out that link in our description.
Also check out Game Time because they have a bunch of cool features. So I'm still in the midst of my Christmas shopping.
I thought you were going to do that all yesterday.
I did, but it
you're
didn't.
still
It
in the
didn't end.
midst?
It didn't end. Yeah,
You're quite the gift
But one of
giver.
the things I did yesterday was I was like, well, I can say this because it didn't work out. I was thinking like, what if I could find like courtside tickets to a basketball game? Because my girlfriend's always wanted to do that. So I was like, there's no way I can
Haven't
afford
we
it.
all?
But exactly, like there's no way I can afford it. But might as well just check. And one of the cool things with Game Time is like, just the way they set it up is you can just kind of like click from one game to the next. And it'll just show you the price right there.
Yeah.
So in about 10 minutes, you can just look at courtside seats for every single game,
Yeah.
which.
What was the cheapest?
I think there were some of the like baseline courtside for like 1,500 and the actual like courtside on the side,
Yeah, like the
22,
Russ.
24. Exactly. Yeah. So nope, that didn't happen, which might be a little bit of a spoiler for Christmas if somebody in particular is watching. But yeah, it's one of the really cool things about Game Time is they're just awesome. I mean, you have the flash deals. It's where we all go to buy tickets. Like when I was looking last night, I was like, how can I figure out what the cheapest way to get courtside tickets is? And I thought for like 2 minutes, and I was like, I bet I could just do that in Game Time because Game Time really is the best. So use the code DNVR and you will get $20 off your first purchase. So download Game Time app, create the account, code DNVR, $20 off. Terms apply, but it's pretty much that simple.
You can get $20 off. That can make the 2,400 a little
$23.80.
better, easier to swallow.
Go see the Wizards.
Maybe not.
So like I know about Game Time through DNVR. I purchased Game Time tickets twice. One to a Buffs game, one to a Nuggets game like 2 weeks ago. Got tickets, really nice ones for like $41.
It's crazy.
Forgot the code.
Oh, no.
You guys,
Well,
I
that
haven't-
means next time.
I
Oh,
haven't-
it's-
next time on Game
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
DNVR.
DNVR. Use the code.
$21.
DNVR is always a good guess.
Come on. I know, right?
DNVR 20.
DNVR,
DNVR
10.
Bronco 50 now.
Oh, see that one?
yeah.
That one's a
Okay.
little tricky.
A little tricky. Do we have our guy Baldy on? Not yet. Okay. We're waiting for Baldy. What game do you think Baldy would go to? We know he lives in Florida, but then he also lives in
Like Philadelphia has some like
Philadelphia
ties.
/ New Jersey.
Where did he play?
He was at a who did Case Keenum play this
Houston.
week?
Oh, Not
Who
in
did they-
Yeah, it
college.
was Houston. It was
Dow?
It was
No, they
in
didn't play Dallas.
Tennessee, right? I think Baldy
yeah.
was at that game, shaking hands with Case
Kissing
Keenum
babies.
before the game. And speaking of Case Keenum, you know what we could see this weekend?
Oh God.
Joe Flacco
Versus Case Keenum.
versus Case Keenum.
Oh man.
Isn't that, and
Oof.
both of those guys have the ability to keep the Broncos out of the playoffs.
Yeah, which is sickening.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
really is.
It is
Yeah.
sickening. What's not sickening is having our guy Baldy join us right now. And Baldy, we missed you last week, but you had a pretty darn good reason. You were at the White House. What was going on there to get that awesome invite?
My buddy, longtime friend, Larry Doby, his father was posthumously accepting the Congressional Medal, Presidential Medal for service as first black player in the American Baseball League. So we had a good turnout. It's a good ceremony. A lot of really good speakers. But yeah, his father was a great man, Larry Doby Sr. So we had a good time down there in Washington. And it was supposed to be done a couple of years ago, but then the pandemic hit, so they postponed it. But, you know, it's cool. Like, you know, they got a special medal made just with his dad's picture on it. And it was great reliving some of the stories of him being with the Cleveland Indians and the Negro League and a lot of stuff that happened back then.
Man, that's
Wow.
way cool. Yeah, when we were talking last week, and you're like, "Don't think Wednesday can work because I'm gonna be at the White House." I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
what an awesome reason!"
When I miss a podcast, it's like last week it was because I was just like tired from moving. I wasn't at the White House.
So, Baldy, some things have happened in Broncos country since we last talked to you, specifically this past week. What I want to know is this defense on Saturday, after looking really good, elite for many weeks, they look closer to that defense against the Dolphins in week 3 than they really did from that elite defense. Why was that? What did you see that really had the Broncos defense or allow the Lions to shred them?
Well, Ben Johnson, the offense coordinator, is really talented, and he does a lot. I mean, they couldn't cover Sam Laporta the whole day. They didn't get a takeaway for the first time in probably 8 weeks or so. They couldn't take the ball away. They couldn't stop them on third down. I mean, they just, Detroit came out and they ran the ball better than I've seen any team run against Denver since probably Miami. And I don't think a lot of people thought that, but Jahmyr Gibbs is talented and David Montgomery's hard to tackle. So, like, they got it rolling. And if you don't affect Jared Goff in that offense where you're getting to him and you're getting the ball out of his hands or you're forcing, interceptions, and that offense is allowed to stay on the field, the playmakers and the way that they attack, it's just different than everybody else. And Denver got the full brunt of it.
Yeah, Baldy, on the offensive side of the ball, we effectively saw the Broncos score 3 touchdowns in a row, and then they were still forced to kick a field goal. And you've said before that Sean Payton, he is intense when it comes to red zone offense. He is maniacal, is what you've said. He wants to score touchdowns. So how do you think his expectations in the red zone really impacted that interaction that we saw between Sean and Russ? Because a lot is being made of what happened.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, we're never probably going to know. But that's a part of it. And whether it's on Russell for guys not, whether Quinn is offsides, not offside. I mean, I don't know the source, but the emotion comes from not being able to score. Like, I think they could have cut it to 28-14 at that point. I forget exactly. But that the emotion comes from exactly that. An opportunity to score because we have to score, and we should score, and we don't score. And then it just – and if you talk to any coach that's ever coached with them, offensive line coaches, they'll all use almost the exact same adjective to describe him. And that's not just on the field, what we all witnessed. This is like in meeting rooms. This is on the field. This is in, coaching sessions when you're trying to put a game plan together. Like, it doesn't end, and the emotion comes out of them when they don't score like that.
I thought from like a game plan perspective, the Lions just looked like they were way more prepared than the Broncos were. Just seemed like they were getting all the matchups that they wanted. I'm first of all curious if you saw the same thing, and then with the like Dan Campbell, Sean Payton relationship, like how does that kind of factor in? Did Campbell just kind of know what was coming?
No, I don't believe that stuff. There's always every team when they play. There's coaching symbiosis between each team, guys that have been different staffs, same staff. I don't think that had anything to do with it. I mean, you can watch Detroit Lions and you can watch the games where they've been outstanding, and you can see why they were outstanding. And you can watch games where they went to Baltimore and they scored 3 points, and why they scored 3 points, and what gave them problems. You can see what Dan wants to do. His offensive line is elite. He does things, Ben Johnson, formation-wise, does things that really sort of reveals your hand of what you're doing. And they get the matchups. Like I said, the Laporta, like everybody's struggling trying to cover that guy and trying to figure out where he's going to be because they move him every down and in pre-snap motion. But I don't think the fraternity that they once were had anything to do with it. I just think that one team is a lot more talented offensively than the other team. Mm-hmm. And it's not that if Sean Payton had Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow on the offensive line, and if he had, the speed of Jahmyr Gibbs and some of the things that he has at his disposal and a tight end, he doesn't have a tight end like that. Mm-hmm. If he had some of those things, like Denver would be a completely different offense. But he's working under some constraints right now.
Baldy, you talk about just how talented the Lions offense is. Now the Broncos defense goes from facing an offense with so much talent everywhere to a Patriots offense that is simply the worst in the NFL. I know their defense is good, scary, elite. They can keep them in every single game. But is there anything to be scared about with the Patriots offense coming up this week?
No, nothing. No. I mean, if you're just watching a game, just as a fan, just so you and the Patriots are on, are playing, just watch the depth of the safeties. Safeties will tell you the fear factor in the offense. Like any team that's playing the Miami Dolphins right now or the 49ers, their safeties aren't inside of 10 yards. The safeties line up against the Patriots at about 8 yards, 9 yards. I mean, they're not fear of the ball going over their head at all. And so they just, Zeke is they're gonna try to run the ball. Those safeties are gonna be involved in the run game all day. It's just something. It's just a fact. There's no threat on that offense at all. Like Hunter Henry is kind of come alive here the last couple of weeks, so you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to all the guys, but they just don't have many guys that strike any fear in you. And if you put anybody around Bailey Zappi, he might, throw you a couple, and so that's just the way it is. Defensively, they're not super talented at all. Their two best players are in injury reserve, Matt Judon and Christian Gonzalez, but they play so fundamentally sound. And they will identify, like they did last week to Travis Kelce, they will identify your most important player, and they will remove that player for the most part. Now, I don't know who that's going to be. If that's Cortland Sutton, I don't know who it is. But because sometimes you don't have that type of guy. So Rashee Rice last week, Kansas City, had 9 catches and a touchdown. And all the attention went to Travis Kelce. Somebody else had a big day. But they're very sound defensively in what they do.
Yeah, Baldy, I think some people would maybe argue that even the Broncos don't really have much to fear on the offensive side of the ball. Heading into the show, I was kind of thinking about a traditional Sean Payton offense and what we've seen week in and week out this season. When you watch these Broncos games, and you mentioned some of the key pieces that this team just doesn't have in terms of depth at certain positions, but schematically, what is missing from this Sean Payton offense that we're seeing right now in Denver versus what he loves to run?
Well, I mean, there was a stretch when Mike Thomas in New Orleans, he leads, he set a record, 149 catches, and his Twitter handle was "You can't guard Mike," and Drew Brees basically acted like you can't guard him. No matter what you do, I'm going to throw it to Mike. No matter what you do, we're going to throw it to him. And he had guys like that. He drafted guys. He's always had big tight ends that in red zone we can just throw it up there in the rim and go get it. He's had his share of guys like that, and he's always had these sort of glorified possession receivers that didn't scare you with speed, but they were big-bodied guys. I'm trying to remember the guy drafted out of Hofstra. Right now, I'm just blanking here. But Mike Thomas, that guy. He always had guys who were third downs. We need a first down. This is the route combination. We'll put Kamara and Mike Thomas on the weak side, and we'll just run these combination routes. And if Kamara doesn't get it, Thomas will get it. And you could just literally march down the field doing that. And they would do it. He doesn't have a Kamara like that. He had a lot of different running backs like that. Pierre Thomas, there's a lot of guys that come to mind that were so versatile in how you could line them. You could line them up receiver, slot, motion them back in the backfield, screen them. So I feel like the go-to X receiver that no matter what you're doing to him, you can still throw it to him. And then the versatile back. And they're doing it by committee. It's not terrible with Javonte and Samaje and whatnot. But he doesn't have that one guy that could just stay on the field and do all those things.
I'm curious, if you were running a defense against the Broncos, how deep would your safeties be?
Probably, well, I would probably be a single high safety team, because I would just try to stop, the running game, because that's where they put most of their emphasis right now. And so I'd play a single high, and I'd probably play him at, somewhere between 12 and 15 yards and shade him to the side of the field where probably Sutton was, or Judy, depending on, who's hot at the time. But I mean, that's kind of how I would play the team. There's no reason to really play the Broncos in a too high shell, say the way Seattle played the Eagles the other night, where they just didn't care how many times you ran it. They just wanted to let the ball go over their head. Like, I don't see any need to actually line up like that.
Yeah, that's very fair. And my last one for you, Baldy, is the Broncos have the easiest remaining schedule of these teams that are making a push in the AFC for a wild card spot. What's the Broncos' most difficult remaining game? You got at home to the Patriots this week, then you get the Chargers at home, then you finish with the Raiders in Vegas. Which one's most difficult?
I think going to Vegas, going to Allegiant Stadium, because the Raiders, the one thing you can say right now under Antonio Pierce is they play really hard. And you're seeing some of the young guys start to play the game. I mean, Max Crosby always played it at a maniacal level. But now you're seeing a lot of guys play the game really hard.
Yeah.
Like I would think the Raiders, and that might be for a playoff spot for both teams. We'll see what happens to the Raiders tonight. But I think both teams could be competing.
Yeah. Well, Baldy, thank you so much for joining us. Happy holidays. Any Christmas holiday plans?
Well, I got to work on Christmas Eve. I got to do a game. Yeah. But I'm going to get to my house in Fort Lauderdale, and we got some things planned for Christmas Day and, around the holiday season. So it should be pretty festive.
I love it. Well, happy holidays. Thanks so much for joining us. Oh, and everyone go follow Baldy at Baldy NFL on Twitter. Just past 400,000 followers, and there's a reason for it. Baldy's breakdowns are the absolute best.
I don't keep track of these things. Is that okay?
Yeah. It's pretty damn good, I'd say.
It's another reason to celebrate on Christmas. I'll do that too.
I love it.
Thanks you, Baldy. Thanks so much for joining with us.
Thanks, Baldy.
Oh, man. Love it. And Baldy bringing some presents to Broncos country by saying nothing to worry about when it comes to not only nothing to worry about with the Patriots offense, but their defense is fundamentally sound, but they're missing their two best players.
I will say on the offensive side, Hunter Henry does make me nervous.
Yeah.
This defense struggles to cover tight ends. And I just think about that Thanksgiving game, and he showed up.
And then I think about just 4 days ago.
And then you think about his teeth.
And then I think about Sam Laporta from that tight end position and what he was able to do to the Broncos. And then I think of, what Hunter Henry could do. You think? How worried are you, though?
Yeah, I mean, that's the point is at the end of the day, it's still Zappe who's throwing him the ball. So, I don't know. Scale of 1 to 10, I'm like a 6.8.
And then, like, the next person on the Patriots offense?
Couldn't name him.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't even know who would be second scariest. Like, Juju, probably?
He didn't play last week, so I don't know if he's playing this coming week or not. But if it's not Juju, Zeke has actually come on more as the season's gone on. Kind of been the opposite of Javonte Williams. I don't think he did much at all early in the season. He's been, like, okay, but probably him? Because,
Ramondre Stevenson is back.
He is back. Was he back this past week, too?
Yeah, only carried the ball 9 times. 21 the week before.
Okay.
So who knows how they'll use him.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
The only thing I know about Zeke is he still got that dark visor that Josie Joe wish he had.
I'm sure he got some sort of neurological problem that made the league allow him to do that. It's not because he's Zeke Elliott, who everybody knows.
Oh, right. You're
Yeah.
saying that facetiously. You think it's
yes.
because
Yes.
he's Zeke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of dark visors, if you want to get yourself a pair of dark visors, check out our friends over at Shady Rays, where if you want one that looks like Zeke, check out their snow goggles, which are awesome. We got a pair on the screen right now. They really are cool, and it's just about ski weather right now. So if you're going to hit the hills, make sure to get Shady Rays ski goggles. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you 50% off if you purchase 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays by using the code DNVR over at ShadyRays.com. Don't just take our word for it. Over 250,000 people have given them 5-star reviews, and Shady Rays is not only a great product at a great price with that 50% off 2 or more pairs, but they've got great customer service. If you don't like a pair, you can return or exchange it for free within the first 30 days. So it's holiday gift giving season now. Get someone a pair of glasses, and then you're going to get one for 50% off. ShadyRays.com, code DNVR.
And go check out Baxton Shanker, too, because they are the best attorneys in Colorado. If you get, like, hit by a car...
If you're in the mood to sue, smash the 2.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a new one.
Wow.
I like that.
Wow, I'm in the mood to sue. I might have to hit them up, see if they have any ideas for me.
Well, don't hit them up, because then
Don't-
they'll
yeah,
sue
don't
you.
hit
They would
that.
sue me. They would
Yeah.
sue me. But yeah, basically anything bad that happens to you where you think you deserve money, call Baxton Shanker. So like if you fall down those stairs over there, which just about everybody here has done at some point.
That last step at the end is just
Exactly.
wider than all the other ones. So
At least
just-
it's the bottom one.
yeah.
If
Oh,
it
that's
was just
true.
somewhere in the
If
middle,
it was a
that'd be
mid one,
dangerous.
oh my god.
Yeah.
Spano would not be able to expand the
No.
All City Network.
No. Wow. But yeah, call Baxton Shanker regardless of what happens to you. They've been helping families in Colorado for more than 20 years. No upfront fees, no fees while they work on the case. It's not until you win money that they get their cut. So they've offices all over Colorado, 30 lawyers on staff. And like we said, 222-2222 to find out if you have a case for free.
Boom, love it. Do we have any...
I love that he just didn't let me do a single read all day.
Damn, boxing
I
you
paused.
out.
I paused and you didn't do it.
Well, no, I was ready. I was just like, is he?
I just figured if I would sit here for like 2 seconds, leave a little pause, then go.
I like that.
Check the tape.
I like that. Check
Yeah.
the tape. Check the tape.
Yeah.
The eye in the sky doesn't lie.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Alyssa, do we have any super chats? We do not have any super chats, so I want to get in. Are you offended by that?
Yeah,
Hurt
of course.
By that?
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That is
true.
sad.
No one wants to talk to us
Guess we
today.
didn't do good today.
But that's actually okay because I wanted to get to one more conversation, and Hank doesn't want to get to this conversation.
Yeah.
But so I put it off till the end, and now I'm just forced to go here, Henry. So my question is, has Sean Payton lost faith in Russell Wilson? And the reason I want to get here is obviously the blow up on the sideline. But the reason I want to get to this question specifically is Russ was asked this exact question after the game. What do you think he said?
I would guess no. No, I guess no. He still has faith in me.
Phrased a little bit
Yeah.
differently. He said, yeah. I mean, well, so he was asked, does Sean
Oh,
still
yeah.
have
There
faith
you
in
go.
you? And he said, yeah. I mean, of course. I think the biggest thing is we're trying to score a touchdown there. I think we all want to score a touchdown. And then he just goes on to talk about that play
Yep.
and what happened there. But, of course, what else is he going to say?
Yeah. See, my thing with the whole thing is that, like, I don't think anything has changed in this relationship since before the season started. I
Okay.
think that every time, like, this conversation kind of comes up for whatever reason, in this case, because it's, like, the blow up on the sideline, it's like, wait, does Sean not like Russ? And I think my answer is the exact same as it's always been, which is that, like, I don't know, if there were just, like, 4 random NFL quarterbacks and Russ was one of them, and Sean got to choose which one he got to play with, I don't think it'd be Russ. I think he'd like somebody else better. I think that Russ's personality kind of bothers her. I think the personalities in general just don't mesh well. I think that Sean is limited in what he can do with Russ. I think that they've kind of found some ways to like get around that. But I think that I haven't had like a new thought on like the Sean Russ situation since like August. And so, like, this happened. It's like, oh, no, like, Sean's mad at Russ. It's like, yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that Sean's mad at Russ. Like, I can see why. Like, it just fits kind of my whole perception of this situation.
Yeah. Well, I brought up the sideline interaction, I guess, or kind of one-way interaction, I guess, from the Detroit game to Baldy specifically, because it really is a non-story.
That's kind of where I'm at, yeah.
And when you're talking about being in the red zone and scoring touchdowns, it doesn't surprise me that Sean Payton, somebody who historically runs hot, got hot. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm not shocked by this. Like, Russ was just the guy in his way at that point.
Yeah.
I don't really think that that's the story here. I'm with you. I think their relationship is probably just like any relationship. I think in this situation, Sean Payton has obviously the more dominant personality, the bigger ego. And I think Sean knows that you have to earn my trust. Like, this is like any relationship. It's not just given, it's earned, right? Sean was a part of the media last year. He remembers talking Russell Wilson as a media member. I think that's why he so early on in this year decided that he wanted to kind of, I guess, shit talk Nate Hackett. And it was because he was trying to take some of the heat off of Russ, because he knows even that it's not all Russ's fault, right? But at the end of the day, he doesn't trust Russ, but that's not because Russ isn't capable, I guess, of running his offense. He just hasn't seen it yet, right? And so I think in this first year, like, I'm not surprised that Russ's leash is short. I also am thinking about, do you guys remember when Drew Brees was out of practice during training camp?
Yeah.
Like, will that ever happen between Russell Wilson and Sean Payton? Fast forward, maybe Sean's coaching somewhere else in 10 years. Like, do you think Russ is stopping by? Like,
that's a great point.
And you know, maybe it will.
No.
Who knows? Like, we don't know where this relationship is going. We don't know where this relationship is going, right? What I can tell you is just based off the statistics of a 34-year-old quarterback, now 35, I get that. But I was looking at Drew Brees' stats from his 34-year-old season. You can see how short Russ's leash is than Drew's was at that point in his career.
Man, that's a great point, because I think everyone looks at, and myself included, they look at the stats of being, okay, well, what is Russ this year compared to last year?
Yeah.
It's not that hard to be better than last year, but comparing where Russ is and where Drew was, too, that's a really good point. And the whole time you were talking about trust and Russ, you know what I thought? Can't spell trust without Russ.
Well,
you only need one S.
Depends on if you want to spell it right.
Bruce, how would you?
You
What would
guys,
that be?
this is a random. Okay,
Russ.
speaking.
Well, it's not words. So you can really just pick it out. You're the first one to say it. You set the stage here.
Can I just tell you, though, just on how this offense is running differently? Like, currently, Russell Wilson is averaging 120 passing yards per game fewer than Drew Brees did when he was 34 years old, that 35 season.
So what is that, like 60%
of
what Drew
Russ
was
is
doing?
averaging about like 200 yards a game. Drew was 320.
Wow, so less than, wow.
Yeah. Russ will probably finish the season with 150 fewer passing attempts, not completions, 150 fewer passing attempts than Drew Brees had that same year.
Wow.
So
what year was this for
This
for
was
Drew?
2013.
2013, okay.
I'll double check that, but I'm 90% sure that was 2013.
No, that sounds about right.
34, yeah. So his 35-year-old season was 2013. He was an AP Offensive Player of the Year. He got 4 votes on that. He was a Pro Bowler. Like, he threw for over 5,100 yards. Like, just the way the offense, but that was how many years into their relationship?
Right.
Like, think of how much trust at that point Sean Payton had and Drew Brees being the conductor of his offense.
And like every offseason, you just change the roster a little bit to fit what you want more. Like, you're just building and building and building. It's like, oh, wait, what if we got Alvin Kamara? It's like, oh, what if we got Jimmy Grant? Like, there's just all those steps and steps and steps. And then you keep what you like and you change out what you don't. And so, like, after this season, who knows? Maybe they say, like, Cortland, it works. Jerry, doesn't work. Troutman, doesn't work. Javon, running backs, they work. So we'll run back there. So they make that one change. And a new receiver comes in. It's like, oh, well, we kind of solved that. But we kind of like the run. And you just kind of slowly find what you want to be. So there is some of that. And like, even if, like, this worked, you'd expect next year to be even better. You expect the year after that to be even better. I mean, I guess at some point you hit the age wall, I guess. But that's its own separation. So it does takes some time to build those things.
Well, and I see Andre here. He's commenting like, "Hey, look, like that's not even a fair comparison. It's 10 years into the relationship.
Exactly.
It was 8, but that's exactly the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Is like the trust needs to build,
Right.
and you can't expect Sean Payton to just come in and be like, "Oh, here's my offensive playbook. Yeah, have at it, Russ.
Right.
Go cook."
Right.
He's not gonna do
that's-
that.
And that's what's so interesting about why this dynamic and why this question is so pressing, not on a week in to week out basis, because are they going to bench Russ for Jared Stidham this week? No, they're not
That'd be
going to.
crazy.
Right.
But what Sean didn't do for over a decade with Drew was make a drastic change. It was pieces around
Yep.
Drew for over a decade. Now there's a massive question this offseason. Are they going to make that massive change
Yep.
and change the quarterback situation? And not just change the quarterback situation and get a new quarterback, but have a massive dead cap that comes with it,
Totally.
and things
Yeah.
like that. So my take on this situation is, Henry, I agree with you. My take hasn't changed since
Yeah.
the moment Sean came here, but I don't think Sean ever had faith in Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
From the moment that he was brought here, in fact, from the opening press conference, he had the opportunity to say, I'm pretty sure there was a question asked where he could have easily gone out of his way to
Right.
say this of, man, look how appealing this job was. We got the richest owners in the NFL. George Payton, those were the two things he pointed to. He could have easily gone one step lower and said, and you got a franchise quarterback in Russell Wilson. And was there any question that Russ was a franchise quarterback with what they traded to give for him and what they gave him in a contract? No, there was no question that the Broncos had signed off on that. He could have easily gone that step. You think if he would have gone to Kansas City and had Patrick Mahomes, or he would have gone to even Los Angeles and had Justin Herbert, that he wouldn't have mentioned him and said, like, yeah, hell yeah, that's a selling point? I absolutely think so. Then we talked about all of the little slights that Sean gave Russ throughout the offseason. Oh, how was your dinner with Russ at the Super Bowl? Oh, well, it was great talking to Joe Montana. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, that's not really what we were looking for. And the one thing you could point to is that USA Today article where he absolutely, as you said, shit on Hackett.
Yeah.
And in order to give Russ some credit, that's really one of the only things. And then on Monday, he did say he and Russ have a great relationship.
Right.
I'm not fully buying that.
So here's what I think about Sean Payton's trust in Russ. He trusts Russ to be the glass half full guy. I remember after the Bears game, he credited him and almost compared him to Drew Brees, saying these are the kind of guys that are positive, they're upbeat, and they see this opportunity to come back in a game where you're down, and they just lick their chops because they know that they can do it. Like, that's the kind of guy, that energy is contagious in a locker room. He's not sitting there saying, and then I'm going to have Russ go out there and throw for 350 yards.
Right.
I'm not going to have him go out there and throw the ball 35 times. Like, he's not saying that. He's like, he trusts Russ to be a positive locker room guy. He's not saying, oh, I trust him with my offense.
Right.
And I
Right.
just think that that's the difference. And I think Sean could do things to help put Russ in better position. And don't make me talk about play action passing even more. Like, I have just exhausted myself on this topic on this podcast. But Russ's most successful years in Seattle, it was play action 30% of the time, minimum.
Yeah.
And it's not like that right now.
Yeah. It's
I
such a
could rant
good
about
point.
this forever.
I will say my thoughts on the contract have changed, like whether they bring him back. I can't remember exactly where I was before the season, whether it was like 70%
So your
one
thoughts
way or
have
the
changed
other.
since the start of the season.
I think in that way, well, they have changed, but I do think they're also back where they started.
Oh.
So because like at 1-5, you're like, oh, they're going and getting a new quarterback. Russ is going to be gone after this year. Whereas before the season, you're like, well, it's another 37 million bucks to keep him for 2 more years, and those charges don't hit the cap until after he's gone anyway. So it's like a $35 million charge in 3 years if you want to keep him for the next 2 years. Like, it's a great deal for a starting quarterback. When you get to that point, you're like, well, you might as well just cut him. Now I'm back to where it was before, where it's like they could do it. They could not. Like, neither way would really surprise me at all.
So both are options.
Yeah. Like, if they say, like, we want to bring in another quarterback and, like, late first round, early second round, something, develop him, have him compete, might as well have Russ here for that. Like, just because we need to have a starter for competition. Like, because I don't think Sean would be willing to bottom out, obviously. Like, I don't think
Right.
he would
He
never.
already bottomed out at 1-5.
Exactly. Like I don't think he'd be willing to go into a season saying like, oh, I hope my quarterbacks work.
Right. 100%. And that's what makes the next month and then 3 months so fascinating. Is we got 3 more really important games.
Yep.
Broncos playoff
Yep.
push potentially coming. And then also we've got the huge question after that, which we'll know the answer by the start of March. But before we get out of here, let's hit one super chat that came in. Mr. Rocket, see, Hank, some people like us, says,
Aw.
I acknowledge this might be a stupid idea due to the draft hole we just got out of, but what do y'all think about trading up to a top spot for a quarterback? This is a great question, something that I think we will be talking about, because I think it is very much a possibility. And I think you prefaced it right by saying, like, well, people are just going to say, like, well, we've already spent too much capital in the past on quarterbacks and head coaches. Sean Payton spent nothing in his time with the Broncos on quarterback draft capital or on trading significant draft capital. So he's in charge. He hasn't spent anything. So I absolutely think it's a massive possibility.
It's possible. We talked about this a little bit yesterday after the podcast, but like Sean also isn't like the draft the quarterback type. Like he started
Patrick
out.
Mahomes.
He did. He wanted him, but he didn't go get him. He could have gone and gotten him
He
if
said
he
he
wanted
was a
him.
pick away.
He was a pick away. Could have traded up if he really wanted him. But I mean, you go back to like when he started. What did he do? He took the reject Drew Brees, who didn't pan out in San Diego, so they went with Phillip Rivers in part because of injuries and said like that's my guy to bring him in. What happens when Drew Brees leaves? How about Jameis Winston? Like that's all the evidence we have. You know,
good point.
we were talking. Dre was saying he thinks the only top 100 pick he ever spent on a quarterback was Garrett Grayson from CSU.
Go Rams.
It's like a second rounder, I think, third,
Second or third, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, also would not be surprised. I mean, Justin Fields, if he's out there, is that the path? If they decide they need to make a change at quarterback, like
Ooh, you would hate that.
he's played better recently.
Oh, credit
He's
for
played
Justin
better.
Fields.
I mean, I have no bad feelings about the takes that I had. That team was awful, and they're capable of nothing at this point. So I was right.
Capable of nothing.
But he does. I mean, he's done a couple nice things. So it's possible they trade up. Like it's possible they run it back with Russ. It's possible they draft somebody in the 3rd round because they think that he's going to be good down the line. They could go find a vet.
They could go trade for Drew Lock.
Sean Payton is unpredictable. Wow.
Drew Locke.
That would be fun.
Oh, I love it. And I wish it was possible for us to keep talking about this, but we got to wrap up. Thank you, Alexis, for joining us. Thank you, Hank, for jumping on today. We'll be back tomorrow on the DNVR Broncos podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.